Okay, the next beautiful lady that I met was Slavenka, and she was our guide on that group, and also a beautiful lady. And I forget which one's more beautiful and which one's younger and older, but a Slav. And so I'm going to invite them up, and they're going to share a little with you. I don't know if they know how to share a little, but they'll try.
I'd like to greet you all with the greeting that we inherited from our grandparents. So both Slavenka and I would like to say, praise be Jesus and Mary. We were taught ever since we were little children that when we go, particularly when we meet our grandparents, we have to greet them that way. Keep in mind, we were born and raised in communist regime, but still we will do it. We're bringing a little bit of Medjugorje to you. Father said we're going to share with you. Last night, somebody asked us to speak a little bit about the history of our place. There is no way to speak a little bit about the history, but we'll try our best. In order to understand Medjugorje and the events of Medjugorje, one really needs to know at least the basic about us, people who live there, and about the part of the world where we are. Somebody also asked us last night, where is it? We said across the pond, across Adriatic Sea, across from Italy on the other side. I think they didn't have an idea where it is, but okay. It's a down south east of Europe. We are a very small country. People who live there in the Western Herzegovina, where Medjugorje is situated, we are Croatians. Due to the historical political reasons, we ended up not in a country of Croatia, but in a Bosnia and Herzegovina. Think of Trinidad and Tobago, you know, two different regions, but it is one state. Anyways, 20th century was the century that we ended up in a communist country. In 1945, some of you might have heard of Yugoslavia. So we were part of a much bigger country called Yugoslavia, and we were under communist regime. The truth was we were not part of the Soviet Union, but still communism is communism. Both of us were born, raised in a system. We couldn't go to school to say God exists. We couldn't say publicly that we go to church. But our parents, our grandparents, our beautiful Franciscan priests, they kept the torch lit up. When I mention Franciscans, I have to go a little back to the history. Croatian like Czech. I know that quite a few of you probably are Czech background. Am I correct? So you can kind of relate, you know, all these little Slavic nations. We've been living in Europe over 1,000 of years. We've been Christians over 1,000 of years. We Croatians, like Polish, we remained faithful Catholics. The reason so was Franciscans. Franciscans came to our region as missionaries 800 years ago, and almost after St. Francis founded the order. They stayed with us, they never left. They are knitted into our national body. From 1500s, 1400s, all the way to 1900s, 400 years, we were part of an Ottoman Empire, the Turks. We were western border of the Ottoman Empire. Croatians living under the Ottomans remained faithful to the Lord due to the Franciscans. They were everything to us. Christian people were regarded slaves, you know, had no rights. But Franciscans, despite the fact that they were persecuted, tortured over and over again, they would get some sort of permission, they would remain with their people. When they left, Franciscans were the ones, the end of 19th century, 20th century, who started to reconstruct the church in that area. And then started to organize parishes. Medjugorje is one of these little parishes that was established the end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century. Of course, Franciscan. It's interesting, they consecrated it to St. James. Not that people knew much about the saints, but Our Lady was already taken, St. Anthony, St. Peter and Paul. The other church is already named, so they ran out of saints that they were faithful to. So what happened? Okay, St. James. Interesting, patron saint of pilgrims. But I'm talking about long, long before Our Lady would come to this place. So Franciscans were not only our priests, they were our teachers, doctors, brothers, sisters. They were helping people, poor people that were illiterate, that didn't have much. They were teaching them everything. They started to organize the schools. Unfortunately, 1945, we became a part of a communist country. And then more persecution happened. I will speak only about the sacrifices and tragedy that happened in our Franciscan province, Herzegovian province. 67 priests brutally killed in 1945, some earlier, some had earlier. Many ended up in prison. The reason so, because the communists wanted to erase our intellect, to erase our soul, because people had trust only to Franciscans. So they thought, okay, let's get these guys out, and then we'll have a material to mold in their way, to teach them there is no God, religion is no good. So that was the idea. They couldn't. They couldn't. They killed only in our province 67 priests. 20 years after, more than 100 young men, including our beloved Father Svetozar, entered seminarians, still in a communist country. The seed, the blood of our martyrs that were killed was the seed for their vocation and seed for our faith. We are very thankful and grateful not only to them, but to our parents, our grandparents, who taught us better. Home, they would tell us, God exists, we would pray, we would go to church. It was allowed, but it was strictly separated from any public affairs. What you do privately, okay, but don't come up with it. If you wanted to make career, you had to be the member of the party, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we would always find ways to sneak in. And that was the atmosphere when Our Lady appeared in 1981 in Medjugorje. Listen, it was a little tiny village in a rural area, God-forsaken, almost isolated. That week when Our Lady appeared, there were a few telephones, but there had been a storm and lightning hit the telephone central, it burned down. So nothing was functioning. Yet the word came out like a fire that 6 children in Bijakovice, one of the hamlets of Medjugorje, parishes were designed, they had to be practical, Franciscans. Couple of hamlets close by, put the church at the center. Nobody would build in the fields, simply because we needed the fields for farming. We used to grow grapes, we still do, we make excellent wine, some people know. And we used to grow tobacco, we had to grow tobacco. It was the communist way, and we would earn very little. So it was a tough life, but yet people always had this trust, centuries and centuries, into Our Lady's intercession, that she will help us. She will help us. Always rosaries. There was a time that we knew, time to work, time to pray, time to eat, time to fool around for us kids. Sometimes, if there was no work in the fields. That summer, 1981, typical summer, people would be working, children were out of a school, and of course, children would help because Everything was welcomed. As I said, we used to grow tobacco, so there was always something to do with it. On the 24th June, it's the feast, as we know, St. John the Baptist. It's a great feast in the area where we live. Of course, youngsters were very happy because there was no work. They would go for mass, lunch, afternoon free. Off they go. Do what you want. 6 children were fooling around at the base of the hill. When they had seen this most beautiful woman, half the slope, the hill. You have to understand, we were Catholic children. We were raised, but nobody had ever told us about apparition. That they didn't have the idea, the concept of the idea. I always quote little Yakov. He was only 10 when he said, I know she's in heaven. What she's doing here, that's for him. It was way beyond his comprehension. Dude. But at first, they did not know. They kept on saying the woman. Only one girl who had seen her first, Ivanka, she kept on saying Gospa, Gospa, Gospa. And to make this little short, listen, they ran away simply because they were so frightened. They couldn't know. The woman was standing. They saw a woman, a normal person, but yet standing on the cloud. So for them, that was, and she was holding a baby Jesus and calling them to come. Oh boy. Ivan said he was so afraid that that woman is going to follow him. So he locked himself in the room. Little did he know, he still has daily apparitions. The woman is still with him. Nobody knew what's going to happen. The word went like a fire. Their parents, grandparents were saying, don't go. You don't know. It could be somebody playing a nasty joke. It could be from the evil one. Don't go. But they did go. They did go. The second day, the hill was full with the people asking, where are these children? Who's these children now? What's going on? Because and then the word spread. The third day, there was hundreds and hundreds of people all over the place. The 25th of June, the second day that we celebrate as the official anniversary, she didn't say much. When they knelt in front of that beautiful woman, remember Ivanka was the only one who kept on saying, it's Gospa. She looked at her and she simply said, Gospa, where is my mama? The poor girl, her mother had died in February that year. She had only that question in her heart. The other children say, this beautiful woman, she only smiled, looked at her in the most beautiful voice. She said, your mama is with me. They cried, they prayed, but she disappeared. Miriana managed to ask, are we going to see you again? She's not, didn't say a word and disappeared. The third day, boy, remember, the telephones were not working, no communication. The little Bijakovic's little hamlet of Podbrdo is isolated. There was no road ending up there. It was dirt road. Everybody knew in the area, all the way down to the city of Mostar. Google the old way, the women, power of talk. Power of talk. Everybody knew. So I remember my mom went walking with the women from the street. I thought she's crazy. What would you say if somebody says Our Lady appears? Come on, you'd be a minimum a skeptic. But the beautiful thing started to happen. When Our Lady appeared on the third day, Vitska, the most courageous ones, took the jar from Marinko, their neighbor who had the holy water, started sprinkling and saying, if you're from God, stay. If you're not, go away. But Our Lady smiled, and then she said, do not be afraid, my little angels. I am a blessed Virgin Mary. And then she said something that in my mind, in my heart, is the most important. She said, I came to you to tell you that God exists. And everything started from that moment on. In the weeks to come, she was asking the prayer of the Holy Rosary, The most powerful weapon unites families, unites communities. The most powerful. Confession, reconciliation. Father Leon told you, what's the word he taught you? Mir, peace. My friend Slavenka will teach you another one. Mir, peace. And she said on the third day to Maria, Mir, 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 peace, 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 and only peace has to reign between man and God and between people. Why did she say 3 times? Peace, peace, peace. In Aramaic language, there are no comparatives, there is no superlative. When they want to emphasize something that's the best, that is the greatest value, they would repeat the word 3 times. Peace, peace, peace. She was telling us the greatest value we can have is the peace. Peace in our hearts, and that peace will create peace in our families, communities, in the world. I was wondering why she said, God exists. Of course God exists. No, no, no. She didn't say it in Lourdes and Fatima because the world was believing. 1981, many of us can remember, it was the world without God already. 40 years later, she's still calling us. She's still calling us to pray for the peace. She's calling us for confession, prayer of the rosary, fasting, Holy Mass as a center of our lives. You know, I always love to tell people, our pilgrims, we don't work with pilgrims, we take care of pilgrims. Maria says, we used to grow tobacco, now we grow pilgrims. This way, yeah, right? Maria the visionary, that's her thought. But listen, I love to say we take care of pilgrims. We were young at the time. We had no clue what to do.
Local people started gathering and coming to Medjugorje, and then foreigners started coming. And we always share. So a friend of ours, Silvia, comes from part of Croatia on the seaside. And Silvia said, I was 24. It was year 1984, 83 maybe. And the agency asked the guides. She said there were older guides if somebody was going to take a group of 60 Irish people to Medjugorje. Silvia said, I had never heard about it. So she decided, she said, I was young, I needed money. The group stayed outside Medjugorje. She had no clue where she was going. They came to Medjugorje, went to church. Then she asked local people, what she could do. And they pointed to her to go to the apparition hill. She walked with the group through the fields. You have to remember, Medjugorje was very rural. There were no public toilets, no restaurant. And she said, while I was walking with the 60 Irish people, I saw babushka, granny, in a field watching the sheep. And she asked her, Granny, did you see anything? Even today, when you talk to indigenous families of Medjugorje, they can share a lot because they saw miracles. And Granny was sharing about those first days of the apparitions, and Silvia was translating, and she said, my group was happy as one could be. They pointed to her to the apparition hill. They came down, and the Irish got hungry. No restaurants in Medjugorje. And Silvia was asking around if there was a place that they could go and eat. And they told her that there was a woman in the village who has that deep fryer, I think that's how you call it, a little thing, French fries. So she came to the woman's house with 60 Irish people. And she said, my group is hungry. I heard you make French fries and we are going to pay. And the woman said, no problem. Tell those Irish people to sit down and peel off potatoes. The group was sitting, peeling off potatoes. They paid for their lunch, and that was the first commercial lunch in Medjugorje. I'm telling you this because Medjugorje was very rural. you know, the days went by, and to be honest with you, we were young. We had no clue what we were doing, you know. So I was working at the reception. I need to share this with you. And somebody came, there were many Americans coming, and somebody came to me and said, "You speak English, you go to the airport." I had never been in the airport. I had never seen the plane, you know, in my life. Now we have gadgets, you know, the signs when we meet the group. And I come to my older colleague, my friend, and I said to Slava, "They are sending me to the airport. How am I going to recognize those people? I have nothing." And she said, "Do not worry, you'll know." We had in Yugoslavia at that time many tourists coming. So I go to the airport, and somehow I knew who were my pilgrims. And even today, now, even when I have the signs, you know, I just put everything to wait to check if I'm going to recognize pilgrims. You know, when I speak now to you, I have to tell you that, you know, we studied English in school, both of us. And even today I can, you know, slice English language and tell you all grammar rules and all of that, you know, but I had never spoken to a native speaker, you know, and it was very hard to understand. So maybe a year or 2 years later, imagine I'm 20 some years old, and they told me, "Philip Ryan," the Irish guy, was driving from Ireland. There are 160 Irish people coming, and me, who was working maybe 1 year as a senior guide, to go and to meet the group at the airport. I have younger guides. Some of them were older than me, but I had experience. So we come to the airport. Sorry, Liam. So we come to the airport, and the Irishman comes out. And this is what I hear. Question mark. And I go, "Yes." Question mark. I go again, "Yes." You know, the smile. So my colleagues are asking me, "What did he say?" I said, "No clue. Maybe he asked me to marry him," but I agreed. So why I'm telling you this? When you have, you know, all of us had the knowledge about the language. And, you know, you really had to talk to people. Now I can tell who comes from northern part of United States of America, from the south, all of that. You had to experience that. And it's the same thing about God. You know, through the years, I learned lots of us have a knowledge about God. But in order to be in Medjugorje, you know, to live with pilgrims, you get to know him. We really, as I said, did not have a clue what we were doing, and our friars were helping us, you know, on our way. And now 30 some years later, you know, I can tell you I became a pilgrim myself. I have never had, none of us had any tourist guide, you know, in the group, that eventually we became pilgrims. You know, Slava said, "I'll teach you the new word." You know, Father taught you mir. You know, in the agency I work for, you know, they always keep telling us, you know, pilgrims are your family. And, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I was thinking, how come you can become, you know, my family? I have a family of my own. And through the prayer, I realized, and I'll teach you 2 words really in Croatian. In my language, there is a word when I say familia, family, that includes all my blood relatives, you know, my immediate family, my husband, my 3 children, my sisters, they are family. So that's familia. But there is another word which is very important. And in Croatian language is obitelj. Obitelj are the people, you know, like in my family, my husband and my children. In Slava's case, it's her brother, her sister-in-law, mother, and 7 kids of her brother and sister-in-law. They are obitelj because they live in the same house and they eat from the same pot. And you know, I was thinking, aren't we all obitelj? Aren't we all going to eat from the same pot? You know, and, you know, I know that there are some young people here with you. You know, one priest said, we were not born old. You know, as I said, we did not have a clue what we were doing, you know, what to tell those people. And thanks to our friars, they told us you would do this and that. And I remember as a young guide, I was helping one woman to climb to the apparition hill. You know, I almost carried her. I had strength at that time. And the woman said, her name was Anne Bowen. I cannot remember from where she was, you know, or I don't know if she is still alive, you know, and then said, if you want me to lead, I will not know how, you know. If I let you lead, maybe I won't be able to follow you, but walk by my side and be my friend. And this is, I think, what two of us and all my colleagues have been doing for years. I remember Sister Isabel Betwy, who is still alive, who was a secretary at Steubenville, Ohio University, who brought really the first groups of Americans to Medjugorje. And she had meetings with the priests and all of that. And one of our colleagues, the older guide, she invited him one time to translate. Then the other time she had meeting, you know, with Father Tomislav, with our friars. And she said to Dragan, it's Croatian name, she said to him, he said, what should I do? And he said, you take them to the apparition hill and tell them about it. And this is how we learned. Now we are pilgrims. Even here, I came as a pilgrims to your place just to bring you a little piece of Medjugorje. And I want Slava to tell you about the miracles and pilgrims experience. I hope we won't take too long. We have a couple of minutes.
Well, the wrong thing to give a guy to the microphone. We sometimes, listen, we are Herzegovians. We are born with the faith in our genes. I told you a little bit about our history. God is always present in our lives. We learn to live with that. That's what Our Lady asked us for. She said, live my messages, live it, the world would come to Medjugorje. And that's exactly what happened. Parishioners of Medjugorje responded to her call. That's why we are all here, due to them. But you know, when we first started these groups, as Slavenka told you, we had no clue. We did know we have to pray. We have to take them to the apparition hill. If God willing, one of the visionaries can do the testimony, great. We knew to go up the cross mountain, you know, the holy mass and everything. But what else to do? One day I was running after Father Slavko. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I did everything. He turned to me like this and he said, pray. Never ever we asked what to do with our pilgrims. You can always pray. And then, you know, people started coming, reporting the miracles. Parish and parishioners of Medjugorje, together with the visionaries, in the very first years of Medjugorje, had most beautiful, beautiful experiences. Beautiful. And then people started to report the miracles. I told you, we are Herzegovians, and the faith is part of us. It's our life. God gave us a faith, strong, firm, but then he gave us a reason. Sometimes if somebody reports, I don't know, maybe the sun spinning or so, I have to confess, I was very much skeptical. I would rather look for some logical explanations. But time going by, you learn. God teaches you. Miracles do exist. Sometimes they are in the form of a physical miracle, but very often they are in the form of spiritual. 30 some, almost 40 years after, my greatest miracles are you, people that God sends to us as our pilgrims. But as I said, God knows the best us. He knows every individual person, and he knows what kind of miracle you need. Never ask for it. They never happen when we want them to happen. We've learned that. They happen in God's time.
I have to share something. You know, we pray a lot with pilgrims and all of that, and they happened, you know, to a friend of ours. Sometimes pilgrims stay a little bit longer in one of the restaurants, have a couple beers. You know, the agency, sometimes people do not want to pay for single supplement, you know, pair unknown people to share the room. So this group had a couple beers, you know, more than they were supposed to have. And this woman, Mary Bomber, fell asleep. The next morning she woke up and she started screaming, "Miracle, miracle, I can see, I can see." She jumped on her roommate's bed. "I can see, I can see." And she was jumping around. Then she went to the bathroom and checked. She forgot to take her eye contacts. But then, God has really a great sense of humor. And, being young, and sometimes I wanted to see, I was thinking I'm such a good storyteller, it would be nice, to share a miracle. I wanted my rosary to turn gold, all of that, And then miracle did happen. In 1993, there was this woman, American, Nancy Flower was her name in my group, who came crippled to Medjugorje, and she went home dancing. And, through the years, I understood I really do not need a miracle. My miracle is Father Leon. My miracle are Jeff and Dankica, Janet. All of these people, where are the carpenters? My dear carpenters, I want you to stand up. My heart is really, because these people brought so many pilgrims from this area to Medjugorje. They are the miracle. They had problems with bishop bringing priests to Medjugorje. And last night, Gerti Berayu was crying. She said, "Medjugorje came to me." Father Svet is my miracle. Elizabeth Victory, I do not know, all of you, and you realize, after so many years, I do not need my miracles, because you are all my miracle. And I think this event here we have today. Thank you very much.
Medjugorje, it's you. Ines, you are Medjugorje. Medjugorje lives in the world because the message of Our Lady has been taken by pilgrims to the world the way Our Lady wanted. She dropped the messages from that hill, like when you drop the stone and make circles. And that's how the message went to the world. Medjugorje lives there. As Slavenka said, the beautiful carpenters, Elizabeth Victory, Pat Pope, beautiful Carol and Sharon came from California, Orange County. Pat was driving 10 hours. That's a pilgrim. Father, I told you, don't give us the microphones.
I'm going to turn it off.
Don't give us the microphone.
I love
Yes.
them. I
Father,
love
Thank
just
you.
to say- Where is, just to say one thing, Stephen, right?
Yeah.
Asked us last night, could you tell in a couple minutes, where are you from? Just to share one thing. A couple years ago, my colleague, who is a guide in Holy Land, came to Medjugorje, and they told me, take a good care. He guides pilgrims. And I was thinking, what can I show to the guide from Holy Land? We have nothing in Medjugorje, 2 hills and a church. And the week was over. You know what he said? I was able to feel the heartbeat of our church in Medjugorje. That's where I come from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And they're only at minus 10, 20, 30 seconds.